I've been playing around with the Behringer MS-1 MKii for about a month now and have stumbled upon an ARP issue where the arpeggio doesn't behave itself properly. So in this video I'm going to show you how to work around the issue. And I say work around the issue because I do not believe this is expected behaviour, and so instead I suspect this is a bug within the firmware which hopefully Behringer will squash in a future update. But in the meantime, this is how you get around the problem. When you first try and use the ARP function, instead of the ARP looping as you expect, you only get a short burst of notes. For me this is around 3 notes, and then the ARP just gives up the ghost. It completely stops. So no matter what I try to do with the keyboard, including turning things off and on, the problem persists. Similar symptoms are experienced when you try and use the internal sequencer. What happens with the sequencer is it appears to start the sequence and then plays just one note repeatedly and ignores the rest of your sequence. Again, whilst you're in this state, there is no way to get the sequencer to behave normally. Before you attempt to solve this issue, you'll need to make sure you're on the latest firmware version, as there have been a bunch of improvements for the ARP and sequencer functions. At the time of making this video, the latest firmware version is 1.0.6. This is the first main firmware revision since the release of the MS-1 MKii and should be considered the baseline for getting most normal behaviours from the ARP and sequencer, especially when attempting to play with the glide functionality. So to check your firmware, connect the MS-1 to a computer with the latest version of the Synth Tribe app installed over USB. Again, it's important to make sure the latest version of the app is also installed on your computer, as the newer synths are only supported by the later versions of the Synth Tribe app. Okay, so with that out of the way and everything up to date, we're going to focus on the general tab within the Synth Tribe app. The key setting here is to make sure the clock source is set to internal. When you do this, you'll find nothing really changed with the symptoms and you'll still get the same problem. So what you then need to do, and the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle, is to remove the USB cable. Weird, I know, right? But when you do this, you should now be able to control the ARP and the sequencer from the synth without any further errors. What I found really odd is, for me, this is the only way to get out of this kind of glitchy situation. However, sometimes I'll come back to my setup and do things exactly in the same way, and lo and behold, the ARP will play as expected. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. Like I said at the top of the video, this is perhaps more of a workaround than a permanent fix. The only way I've been able to get the synth to behave in an expected fashion is to set the clock source to internal and remove the USB cable. I've tried setting the clock source to MIDI in and then sending MIDI clock data from Ableton Live to the synth with no joy. When you find yourself in a glitch state, you can forget sending MIDI notes from a DAW and turn on the ARP. For me this isn't too much of an issue, as I wouldn't be using the onboard synth ARP when I have a far more sophisticated option within my DAW. That said, it's something I would like to see fixed in a future update, as I prefer to have my synths permanently cabled up and don't want to have to remember to pull out the USB cable every time I want to do something with the ARP or the onboard sequencer. Hopefully this has helped out and shown you how to get around this little annoyance with the MS-1 MKii. It probably applies to other Behringer synths as well, as their MIDI implementation is pretty consistent across the board. Have you noticed this error, or have you found any other niggles with the MS-1 MKii which aren't functioning as expected? We'd love to hear your experiences, especially if you've got to the bottom of the circumstances which cause this glitch. Oh, and if you're into other Behringer gear and want to watch more videos on the MS-1 MKii and other Behringer synths, then have a look at this little video over here.